Well, good morning, and here we are back again for another couple of hours, and a little look at what's happening around us. Um, First of all, I'm going to replay a little video that we made after Symes was in yesterday and outlined to us what we can expect on the Jubilee weekend. And they've got a nice little they've got a nice little brochure out now, which went on sale, and you can get it. And I would urge you to actually get it. It's £3, but it's worth it. And we just take a skim through the centre pages. It's not very thick, not very big, but it's very important, informative, and it does tell you what's happening on the big day. So here it is. Oh, there we are. The celebrations take place, and we've got a long weekend. We've got a public holiday on the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th is a Saturday, 6th is a Sunday, and then it's back to porridge on the Monday. But what that magazine, little magazine, which costs £3, sometimes it'll be sold on the streets between now and the day. But the sooner you get it, the better you will find. To know where to go and what to do for Jubilee. It also gives some interesting facts and figures about past royal occasions here, when they occurred and what they occurred for. So it's well worthwhile getting. Just a recap of the main events on that day, on June the 2nd, is Beacon Day. The country is going to be lit up by beacons. Every community will light a beacon or several, and they will all burn at the same time, right throughout the country. And it'll be quite a thrill, I think, to be a part of that, or even though vicariously, as the fires and the beacons come up. And I'm delighted to say that my friend and guest has arrived. Come and sit down, Stephen. We don't stand on ceremony in this in this broadcast from the White Hart.
Just as well, because as you know, I am no longer the mayor, and it's gardening day today down at the secret garden, as I struggle on the bus with compost and gosh knows what else.
Well, I think one of the things that that we will do straight away once you settle down is for you. One of the admirable things is even through his period of being a mayor, Stephen looks after a number of the gardens that we have, public gardens in Lewes, because those people who are supposed to look after them get the act together, don't get their act together, to be quite honest. But one is
Keith, I must correct you. They are no one's responsibility. Ruth O'Keefe and I took over doing them when what is now the Premier Inn was the Magistrates' Court. And they were really the largest ashtrays in Christendom. They were the trees, of course, and then just pebbles around them. And every cigarette end from every witness or accused was there. And we both thought this is not a good thing for the centre of Lewes. So it must be, I must have been doing them for about 10 years.
Yes, but there's one on Western Road that you took me up to, yes. And that there was some sort of suggestion that didn't they stop you doing it?
Oh yes, they stopped me doing it because the county felt they should do it, except they didn't do it for over a year. So Ruth and I asked if we could have it back, and they wanted to charge us £500. And I thought, actually, you should give us £500. And also, of course, the Secret Garden, which is looking very good this year.
Now, I want you to tell us about the Secret Garden, because it is secret enough that you need to know where it is to appreciate it. But it is brilliant, and it is a brainchild. Stephen, it is a brainchild of yours, really. You took that over and you've turned it into just a lovely little park or floral display. Tell us about it.
Briefly, it is what was Pinwell Lane. It is the Twitten that left Friars Walk and went up to the High Street. But over the years, bits of it were filled in, and the only bit of it now is a little bit alongside the All Saints churchyard and between All Saints, excuse me, between All Saints churchyard and the Friends Meeting House. It is easily seen from Friars Walk because it has the gateway, the stone gateway from the Grey Friars Monastery, which was erected there in the late 19th century by Every, the great Lewes ironmaster. And no one seemed to bat an eyelid about it. It was overgrown, it was a mess, and I suggested some years back that the Friends of Lewes could say that it is a thing, the vista through it is good, and we should make it look interesting and not just bits of old stone forming a gateway. And they said yes, and I didn't realize it would be me that ended up doing it. So do it now, and I'm astonished. You did a thing about it a few years back, and people are there taking photographs of it and all the rest of it. So I'm quite pleased with that, and I'm greatly touched by the number of people who stop me when I'm gardening and saying thank you very much and give a bit of money for plants and things like that. It's I enjoyed doing it, and I think it is in some ways a credit to the town. Or that sounds conceited, but
Well, you shouldn't. Well, then be conceited because it really you and one or two volunteers have created a wonderful little feature for the town. I was privileged because you took me around and you showed me exactly how you develop the plants, but also on the other side of the wall, you showed me the some of the graveyards, so the Baxter family, and how you also very carefully make sure that the plants around there are looked after as well. The gardening mayor.
well, not so much when I was mayor, and I'm having to work twice as hard now to get it back to scratch. But let's see how it develops.
Right. Well, I mean, it's already developed beautifully. It's a lovely, lovely feature. The secret garden. It doesn't take long to take a look, but if you're in Friars Walk, watch for it and take a peek through, because it is a pleasure to view it. And all credit to the gentleman sitting to my left, because he, with one or two friends, developed it and made it into a terrific feature for the town. Now, you just mentioned that you couldn't do things quite as much as when you were mayor, and you've only just now relinquished the mayoralty. Within the last couple of weeks?
May the 12th was the date. I have to say, Keith, it wasn't in terms of time the greatest mayor year because we were in and out of COVID restrictions most of the time. We had to have council meetings by Zoom. We gradually opened them up and had them in the Corn Exchange. Now they're back in the council chamber. And so the number of events the mayor was expected to attend were severely limited, but gradually escalated for the past few months. I have to say that it is a role of two parts. There is the role the previous town clerk emphasized, which was that of ceremonial, but there is more. It also involves being chair of the council, so chairing full council meetings. And that is more important than the previous town clerk would have admitted. Of all the events, let's just do the ceremonial ones. The one of greatest importance was the British citizenship ceremony held at the Grange, with 21 new British citizens being welcomed on that day. 2, would you believe, from America, some from Eastern Europe and other countries. And that was, it was a very important ceremony for them and indeed for me. But then we have had other ceremonial things, the investiture of 2 high sheriffs, one for East Sussex and one for West. Don't know why, but the West Sussex high sheriff was invested with the role at the Crown Court in Lewes and not in Chichester. So the mayor's parlour was given over to their robing rooms and the judge's robing room and the things like that. And also the 2 award ceremonies for local residents who were receiving the British Empire Medal. That was presided over by Her Majesty's representative in East Sussex, the Lord Lieutenant, and I was in attendance for that. But the things that gave the greatest pleasure of all were the things that we did for Lewes. And this is something I've been harping on about almost forever, that the town council is the council for Lewes. We must interact with Lewes people and find out what they want and do our best to assist them in getting it. One of these events in March was the Mayor's Senior Citizens Tea. And it was quite an emotional time because it brought together groups of elderly people who, because of COVID, had not been able to come out and leave their homes and meet their friends. It was the first occasion. And the High Sheriff very kindly was in attendance and went around talking to them. And for a party from the cliff end of town, it was their first time out from their rest home for 2 years.
Wow.
And that really was a heartwarming achievement. Two more very notable Lewis events. One was the closing night of the Black History Month, which was so successful as an enterprise, we are going to repeat it every year. And secondly, the giving of civic awards to our two world famous local poets, John Agard and Grace Nichols, who had both received medals for poetry, one the Queen's Medal and one from an international magazine. And it was only right that Lewis should recognise its own people who are ambassadors for the town. And that went so well. There have been some truly memorable occasions which have served Lewis. And that really is what my theme has been about, and what my idea when I was first elected as a town councillor 11 or 12 years ago now. We must serve Lewis Town. We are not the big strategic authority, such as the county council. We are the town council for the people of Lewis Town. And it seemed to go well.
Well, I mean, really, I don't want to be too fulsome because from time to time we indulge in fisticuffs when we don't agree. But you have created the mayoralty of Lewis with a very high profile. You were everywhere during this year, even though you were fighting against COVID and some of the restrictions. Just absolutely everywhere. And Mick Symes was in yesterday, and we were discussing you and some of the things that you've done. And he agreed with me that you really have lifted the mayoralty to a new level, but at a time when we don't have a district council anymore.
Well, of course we do. It still exists.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure, if you read the local papers, if the district council is hand in glove with Eastbourne, or Eastbourne actually controls where the hand goes in the glove. Very odd state of affairs. And let's see what may be done about that.
Yes. Now, at times, the pressure was so great that when you and I have had sort of little conversations, you sort of said, oh gosh, I think I'm going to move out of Lewis after this. It's taken up so much time and so much effort and so on and so forth. Now I'm delighted to see that the pressure is slightly off, that you enjoyed it all. So are you going to stay as a councillor?
Well, that remains to be seen. It's a bit too early yet to decide who is standing next May. But if I can be of use, I would like to. There are certain things we need to make an awful lot of noise about in Lewis, such as the North Street development and things like that. And I feel I have very valid points of view. But I must just correct you. It's not that I want to move out of Lewis, because it is that when I stop being a councillor, if I stop being a councillor, it will be embarrassing for me to have people stop me in the street and tell me what they need help with if I am no longer in a position to help. That is the thing. I don't like to offer false promises. And so at the time I ceased to be a town councillor, I would look to be a little further out, because it's, Keith, you've seen in the street, people stop me. And of course, that is part of being a councillor. You must be seen by the people you represent, and they must feel that they can always come up and speak to you. And it's what you, it's not what you do, it's what I do. It's what a councillor should do. Should be seen around the town and available to speak with anyone who wants to, which is one of the joys of doing the little gardens down by the Premier Inn, or outside Fuego is a better description, because that seems to be the place people know they'll find me and have a chat. It's quite surprising.
Yeah.
A friend of mine came over from Brighton on Friday and was doing a bit of help with the watering can, and was absolutely astonished at the number of people who stop to talk or ask questions. And I enjoy it. It would be foolish not to, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Why on earth would you be a councillor if you didn't enjoy it?
But also, I mean, as I recall, I think that you said to me that when you took on the mayoralty, that your theme, and in fact, you put a theme to the rest of your councillors, is connecting with Lewis.
Reconnecting with Lewis. Because for so long, members, with one or two notable exceptions, have been invisible to the public who elects them. They only see them at election time. Well, not with me. I took it on as a full-time job.
Yes, indeed. Now, do you feel that at the end of your mayoralty that the reconnection is improving?
It has started, but there is so much more to be done. It's a personal opinion, so it must not be taken as the view of anyone else. But down at the National Park is, of course, the chief planning authority for Lewis Town. And they do seem from time to time, in my opinion, to consider design more important than policy. And the National Park's policy is to maintain the Lewis community. Now, that means to me maintaining all classes of Lewis society, because it's that gives Lewis its spirit. And I am distressed when certain developments going ahead seem not to include what are now called social rents, but which could be construed as council housing. All people deserve the right to live in a nice and flourishing town. It must not just be for the wealthy, who, as I've said in the past, maybe not to you, but to others, that not everyone in this world is academic. Not everyone wants to get a PhD and then sit in a coffee shop working on a laptop to earn a living. There are many others who want to use their hands and become skilled builders, skilled bricklayers. We must make sure they're looked after as well. I think I told you some time ago, outside the still unlet unit at the Premier Inn, a woman and I were talking, and I said, you know, this wouldn't make a bad Poundland. And her answer was, oh, no, not in Lewis. We've got a Waterstones. And I said, well, how does Waterstones help with the 4 food banks and the 2 estates where there could be as much as 30% child deprivation? And she walked off. And that was the point I made in a personal capacity to the developer of the North Street Quarter. I said, what is all this going to do to aid the socio-economic mix that is the Lewis community? So that is still very much my mission.
Yes. Now, you actually point out from time to time, because people say this town for instance, your unknown lady has got some idea what this town is all about. But you just mentioned Every, and this was very much a working class town, an
More than
industrial
that,
town.
Keith, more than that, yes, industrial town. And I think that concept finally disappeared with the establishment at Falmouth of the University of Sussex. At the time Every's closed down, Lewes property prices crashed, and some of those big houses were going for next to nothing. Some of the richer parents of some of the students in the first two intakes at Sussex bought those houses, turned them into student houses, and some of those students, now as old as you and I, are still here, not realizing that, as English Heritage has pointed out, Lewis's industrial heritage is now being lost. I will give you and concede that the days of one firm employing a workforce of 600 are over. But in Brooks Road, which is still zoned for industrial use, we could see 20 small workplaces doing clean work, such as electrical engineering or computer engineering, each, say, with a workforce of 20. But the total workforce in that area would be 400. And that gives work for all sorts of people. We must not forget those younger adults who do not know where they will live or indeed what they will do to pay for their houses.
Yeah. You know, one of the things about Every is that not many people know about him. And yet, not only did he run a very big industrial firm, but he was also very socially conscious, wasn't he?
Yep.
Hot meals for the workforce,
Yes.
social dances on a Friday night.
Yeah.
I mean, things that we totally have forgotten existed here and existed because of this man Every.
Well, a lot of the names still around in the town, their ancestors were members of the town council, and they did so much for Lewes. Things are changing, and of course, when the local government system changed in 1974, the borough of Lewes ceased to exist. Now, the borough of Lewes had done housing and things like that. That role was given to the district council, and other roles went back to the county. And it is interesting that it is that middle tier, the district authorities, which seem to be the anomalies now. And there was a scheme to make Sussex a unitary authority and give the towns and parishes more responsibility. That seems not to be coming to fruition. I dare not say another election promise that has not been delivered, but you could assume it from what I'm saying.
Yes, yes, yes. Would you mind telling our viewers a little bit more about Every? I mean, I know just a little bit, but you actually are something of an expert on him.
Not really, Keith. The biggest claim to fame of Every, surely, is that you can still see his name on nearly every railway station in the southeast of England. For the Lewes Iron Foundry made all those cast iron columns which hold up the canopies on station platforms and other things around the railway network. If you look closely on any station in the southeast, you will probably see at the foot of the column Every Lewes. He was an iron master in the best sense of the word.
Yeah.
But also, we had 3 printers. one of whom, let me try and remember, there's used to be in North Street, and the name of the firm is the name of a building in North Street, used to produce banknotes.
Ah.
Don't forget, we had the Lewis Bank as well. The building to the left of Barclays that was the Lewis Old Bank.
Right. So actually, a very, very colourful background that is partly forgotten. I mean,
It's all becoming a bit anodyne now, isn't it?
well, I'm not so sure that actually, with the way that things have gone, that we are not now scrabbling almost nationally for a new identity. I mean, did you see, for instance, that there was a suggestion that that actually, instead of Scotland and Ireland, or Northern Ireland and Wales all talking about departing the UK, that what it should be is England should depart the UK and develop a national identity of its own, which it seems to have lost.
But Keith, as you really know, the English identity was formed and forged by all those people who invaded the country in early history.
Yes.
What is a true Englishman? Well, I was born here, but my antecedents were in Germany, Poland, and France. It is that surely that makes this country what it is, and you have to be careful that in looking for, as you describe, an English identity, you are not trying to recreate those days of empire which we now know existed perhaps to fleece other countries for our own wealth. Other countries may now be fleecing us for their wealth, but that really isn't the point. I don't think we need jingoistic imperialism again. We need to put our shoulders to the wheel to make our contribution to the world great again.
Yes, but if we look at it with your theme of reconnecting with Lewis, the town council, I mean, wouldn't it be nice if Louisians knew that when they went down to Brighton and sat on the front, is they putting their bum on every shelter facing the sea? That when they walk along the pier, a lot of it is every ironworks. I mean, those are the sort of things I think we shouldn't see lost.
But there is a difference between pride in your town and jingoistic imperialism.
Oh, I would agree with
and pride in Lewis and its achievements is important, as long as we don't just rest on the laurels of that pride. We must go on and continue to be noted for what we produce. And Lewis Football Club is a good example of the way that runs with its women's team and everything else. That is a good ambassador for Lewis.
Yes, I would agree with you. I would agree with you. I mean, I suppose over the years that I've been here, I've sort of I pop up at Lewis and watch them from time to time, and you can see that I think it's about the last 7 or 8 years that they've really started to develop the ladies' team.
Oh yeah,
and this very socially important equality of payments of fees. I don't know whether they call them salaries or whatever. I mean, those once again are the sort of things that's happening, but we do tend to hide our light under a bushel. I don't think it's too jingoistic to say, hey, listen, Lewis does some pretty important things.
Well, let's do what we do for Lewis and make sure that the name is still perpetuated through history.
I agree. Now, you will be setting out as a councillor for the coming year. What do you see, particularly with now the interesting background that you've had as mayor? What do you see happening in this coming 12 months?
That is really for the council to decide. And the new town clerk, Laura, has some interesting innovations and interesting reworkings, which will gradually unfold during this year and be ready to be implemented at the start of the next term in May 24. We're doing a lot of work in the background, and we are formulating policies which will ensure Lewes keeps on not being drubbed by others.
But I wonder if I could just pursue that a little bit with you, but because you will have a broad idea, having set the pace, if you will, this past year. You'll have a broad idea of the sort of thing that will be looked at, that will be positive. Because I being the mouth that roared and the loud mouth and so on, I'm always very negative to try and get the positive. So I say, oh, look at the streets. There are no people in there. Oh, look at the pubs. There are no people in there. And then suddenly Mick Symes comes in yesterday and tells me everything that's been going on in the background to celebrate the Queen's Jubilee.
Well,
and it's impressive.
This is a good point you raise. The town council decided last year to award £15,000 for the firework display, which will be held at the Jubilee weekend. Now, there were members of a certain party who voted against it for all sorts of reasons, including air pollution. But now it appears that the money from the town council has been the catalyst which has brought all forms of people together to donate and to sponsor events. They are beginning to forget that they voted against it and say, what a wonderful scheme this has been.
But isn't that ever thus?
I think it probably is. But it's too early yet to know quite what the formula for the coming year, because for the coming year, I'm talking about 23-4.
Right.
This is the period of time where those ideas are formulated and take shape and are voted on to become policy. Because in local authorities, members dictate policy, officers implement it. Although you may think that in another place, not half a mile from here, officers dictate policy and members have to put up with it. The real thing is members dictate policy, officers implement it, and those policies for the future are still being formulated.
Right. If I could just look at the rather serious nature of our environment at the moment nationally, some of the things that, for instance, the energy crisis, the Brexit crisis, if you like, the immigration crisis, a lot of these things we read about nationally. But somebody told me the other day about there's a family here that's taken in 6 or 7 Ukrainian refugees. What sort of impact on our community? Because I find it difficult to understand what our personality is as a town, if you like. So what sort of, with somebody who understands much better, what sort of things that we are facing nationally are likely to impact on Lewes?
Well, the things you've mentioned, the climate crisis, things like that, the leaving the EU. We had many workers from many countries, not just workers, doctors, dentists, hospital surgeons, that we seem to have excluded from English society. But there is a limit on what the town council can do. But Lewes has long had an international mix. It is, well, I suppose it is about 12 or 15 years ago, for example, that the last Prime Minister of the Polish government in exile, which was formed during the war, lived in Lewes. He used to come into Catlin's shop. A fair number of Polish and German people are still here working. It is the international mix that makes an awful lot. If we had to rely on the little Englander, well, you may soon find out what life is going to be like.
Well, let's hope that doesn't come to pass. I mean, one of the things that I think about, as you point out, is this nation is an integration of all sorts of people that come from elsewhere, not least of which is one of your fans was my late wife, who was Canadian, and very proud of her Canadian heritage. And she used to love coming into your shop because what she couldn't do in Canada, she couldn't say, I want a quarter of this and I want a quarter of that. And so she spent quite a bit of time in your shop and got to know you very well. I think probably she was a prime example of somebody who integrated very well, never lost her pride in Canada, but nonetheless was delighted to be part of the Lewes environment. And I'm sure that there are lots of other people like that.
Yeah, everyone who comes here brings something more to the town, and we must welcome it. We are dismissive, as you will know, of some people who walk into the town one weekend and say, what a lovely town, and decide to buy a house at about £650,000 and then want to mould the town as they think it should be.
Absolutely.
And Lewes must not kowtow to that sort of change. Lewes is Lewes, and we must respect the different types of architecture. The history of the town is reflected in its streets, and we must not see that demolished.
Now, I'm going to play a little something because I put this together after Mick Symes gave me a copy of the well, you'll see what it is. We can be heard, I think. It is a copy of the souvenir program for the Jubilee.
Yeah.
And as I said, it took me a bit by surprise because I wasn't aware that so much work was being done in the background. So if we could just take a very quick look at this is only a minute long, at the souvenir program, and then perhaps you could just outline for us what's going to happen in the Jubilee.
The person you must talk to about that is the new mayor of Lewes, Councillor Shirley Sains, who has given a very good introduction to the Jubilee programme. You really must, because I must slip out of the limelight now and the prominence must be given to Shirley as the new mayor.
Well, strangely enough, I actually was trying to find Shirley's phone number last night to invite her on, because she hasn't been on yet. I am aware that it becomes very, very busy in the very first days. But of course, with you, I got to know Shirley a little bit when she was your. I don't know whether you call her a lady mayoress or
No. She was Madam. She was my mayoress. She was also the deputy mayor, and it is the position of deputy mayor 1 year, which goes on to be mayor the following year, and so she is now addressed as Madam Mayor.
Right. So this is a little souvenir thing, and that we have just given a very brief thing is £3, I understand.
Yes.
And we're able to get it in a variety of places.
Indeed.
Yeah. But you just mentioned that the money which was applied to the fireworks that is going to take place, and you go to Malling. Malling, sorry.
Right.
Yes.
How long have you lived here?
I'm still a foreigner. They still treat me as. I've been that way all my life. In Canada, I was a DP. In Northern Ireland I was a runner in, and in Lewis I'm not quite down from London, but I'm not far off.
The man to whom a lot of credit is due is Paul Mockford, who has pulled the programme together.
Right.
And has been, I think, chairing the committee. Mick Symes, of course, invaluable as always around the town, along with others.
Yeah, he gets about, doesn't he, Mick Symes?
I think it's a case of having to. If I just stayed in the sitting room in my flat, I wouldn't have done anything.
Quite. But I mean, that's not your nature. I mean, let's face it, even in the early days of your tenure at the Lewis District Council, you were busy doing the gardens. You recognised the need and you did it, and you continue to do it. And I think one of the things that people got a great deal of pleasure walking by and being able to say, there, that man digging the garden is the mayor of Lewis.
Yeah, I know. And people still remember the shop.
Oh, absolutely. Kathleen's.
People say, oh, it was like an Aladdin's cave. Well, perhaps, but it seemed to work.
Absolutely.
Until the rent kept doubling every 5 years, and then it meant it was totally unviable.
Yeah.
Because there is one word which describes many Lewis landlords. It begins with G and ends in D, and it's pronounced greed.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I mean, do councils feel powerless against these people?
There is no way of regulating commercial rents, as far as I know.
Right.
Yes, housing rents can be controlled, although most of that control has now gone. But commercial rents, market rents, are what the market will pay. And someone in London has set up a sort of cooperative, and they are getting shops let, and it's pay what you can afford just to get the shops open. You may find information about that on Facebook, I think.
Right.
But certainly it ain't coming to Lewis. I mean, when you consider the shops which are now going over the way from the White Hart here, was a man taken a shop lease and was advertising, it will do home cinema, it will do this, it will do that. It has now been repossessed by the landlord. The notice of repossession is on the door. Sussex Stationers is closing. They're having a closing down sale, and it could become a pizza parlour. Now that was Baxter's. That was the retail shop for Baxter's, the Lewis printer, who at one time had a workforce of 600, which used to come onto the streets of the town at lunchtime to buy some shopping, see their friends, have food in a pub or a cafe. That went in the early 2000s. The printing works was turned into live and work development. But very few people do much work there. Mainly it means they end up with a big ground floor for a sitting room. There's very little live and work, actually. And we lost that workforce, you see.
Socially, are we able to regenerate the high street? Much is spoken nationally and locally about it. You mentioned landlords. Are the landlords in Lewis sort of these big mutual funds and so on, or are they individuals?
Very difficult to find out. Some are local people, some are companies. You need to do a land registry search on the property in which you are interested to find that out. As you saw, Santander went, then it became a shop, which is now going also. Sussex Stationers is going. There is a planning application in to turn part of what is now Pro Cook quite a big shop frontage into residential accommodation. But without a high street, where is the focus of the town?
Yes, exactly.
Very difficult to know what to say about that.
Yes. I mean, I worry that we're turning into a town of pizza parlors, charity shops, and so on and so forth.
Well, of course, it was pointed out the other day on the BBC, I think, that retail shops pay something like 700% more in council tax, in business rates, than the mail order suppliers do. And this is something that needs to be addressed if we are going to keep the high street.
Yeah.
The other thing, I think, and from a personal point of view, is to make sure that these various developments around the town, North Street Quarter and so on, do not set up as alternative high streets. This is the high street, and we must do our best to keep it such.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, is there a master plan, or are we struggling against the tide at the moment?
I think it is a struggle at the moment because life hasn't quite got back to normal since the COVID lockdowns. And during that period of practically 3 years, people have lost the art of socializing. They have been kept at home. They haven't gone out and met people. And people almost have to pick up the skill of having a conversation once more. This seems to be the odd thing. And I learned the other week that overall, Blindborn is 15% down in its bookings for this season, an after effect of COVID. And also, August, when the Opera House would expect more visitors from other countries, they are not coming. Are they deterred? Is it not economically viable to come to this country for them? I'm a great European, and I think it was one of the biggest mistakes we ever made to leave and thus have these barriers, which, although when we were in Europe, we were never part of the Schengen agreement, we were extra Schengen. So we couldn't just go in with a wave of the passport. We had to show it and prove it. We've never embraced Europe in quite the way the initial idea was that we should. And the idea that we now have our country back, well, what a mess it is.
Everything is a mess, isn't it? Do you think, Stephen, I mean, for instance, occasionally I would pop off to see my Canadian relatives, and all I needed really was my passport to go and get a ticket, turn up at Gatwick, and go through passport control and get on the plane, and away I went. But now, if I said I'd like to go to Canada at the end of this week, there's a great deal of mystery in my mind about how the travel industry works.
Yeah, I think you're right. And we need, what did they used to say? Travel broadens the mind. We need to see other countries. We need to bring a bit of that experience back here, or we will become, as someone I think once proudly said, a tight little island. What was that apocryphal story from the Telegraph in the 1930s? Fog in Channel, Europe isolated. I think the boot was on the other foot.
Now, Stephen, I like to give those people who are kind enough to join me a few minutes to just talk about something that they want to talk about. What would you like to talk about?
Well, at the moment, I'm too close to Lewis to tell you, but I do think we must do more for the arts in Lewis. There was talk of trying to start a Lewis Arts Council. To be honest, I do not know where that has gone or if it has been lost in preference to other schemes. But we also must do more to engage with the younger adult voters, for they are the town of the future. And I'm afraid there are, I believe, elements in Lewis who do not vote at local elections because their voices are drowned out by others clamouring for what they want. And this idea of reconnection, it must start with the younger voter and make them realise that for the future of the town, their voice now is important. And we have to give them that confidence that makes them want to shout about what they want.
Is there a program to try and widen the influence of not the influence, but the knowledge of council, what it does and its activities?
I think it is down to members. And I don't know if everyone shares my idea. We shouldn't tell them what they need. They should tell us what they want. So please make your voices heard.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the formative years are when you're in school or college or whatever. I mean, basically, what you're really saying is we've got to get back to a democratic feel for this community.
Yeah.
Is there any room in going into the schools and colleges?
I think there could be, but the approach, I think, could be made by the three levels of local government, town, district, county, writing to the head teachers and saying, we want to come and tell you a bit about what we do. We need younger voters, not younger voters, we need younger councillors. People are still going on in their late 70s, and we need to hear from the younger ones, often dismissed as disaffected youth. Why are they disaffected? Why do they get more joy from running around damaging cars? Is it because there is nothing for them to do?
Yeah.
What would they like to do? And we're falling down very much on that,
Yeah.
I think.
I wonder if I can just, because I am aware that you're a busy man, and that I would like to just, if I can find it, just play our bit for the stuff that we're trying to do for Jubilee, and which one is best? I think perhaps that one is, because there are shots from 1952, 53, 54,
and that coronation era.
Yeah, and it may be that you would say, aha, yes, we've lost that, or we could rejuvenate that. It's not very long and not very definitive, but nonetheless, it may be that it would bring.
Oh, the Golden Jubilee. That wasn't too long ago, was it? 2022. I think you have to consider the changes in the country's attitude. And for myself, I think the death of the late Queen Mother Keith,
Now,
if you
one of
would
the
see,
things
I
that,
need to get going.
Okay, just one thing, if I can just ask you before you do, is there were two things there that I thought. First of all, one of the first things there was smog.
That
In
was the great
1952, we
killer.
still got smog. Yeah.
That was the great killer. And it was that led to a change in coal burning. I remember it being off school for weeks.
And the other thing that we saw there was the very close terrace housing, which was built in the Industrial Revolution. I mean, do you ever see that really coming back in any force?
Not in that way, but if you look at tower blocks, are they not the same thing but going upwards instead of along?
But in my view, and it seems to me that the experiment when they first built them in the 1960s is that what it did was it destroyed the social atmosphere of those
Well,
terrace
indeed,
houses.
those terraced estates had a social and community feel all their own, which wasn't carried over into the high-rise flats. I don't know.
Stephen, thank you for spending the time that you have this morning. It's very good to talk to you. I would hope that you're going to rejoin the Mirador team because you performed a really very vital. And people ask about you whether you actually. I've explained that there was some conflict of interest when you were mayor. So I do hope that I can talk to you very soon about Kathleen's Corner, which is a very popular item, and actually did. One of the things that I've always felt is after the Harvard Review is that the sort of small though we are, is we do help keep the local councils on their toes, and that we can reflect perhaps some of the things which they need to pay attention to. And you are very good at highlighting those.
Thank you. Let's see what happens.
Okay. Good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure, Keith.
And if I may say so, much as we welcome Shirley, you will be missed as mayor because I think you were a very, very successful mayor and really stirred our community and our town and got it moving. And you are very, very high profile, whether you meant to be or not.
I'll be careful. More careful, in fact. Thanks, Keith. Good to chat with you.
Thank you, Stephen. Right, Stephen Catlin, our recent mayor, but also a businessman here.
And still a local councillor.
And still a local councillor, and going to be for another couple of years, and hopefully for another 6 years. Are they 4-year terms?
4 years.
Right. There we are. That's what we're hoping for. Right, where are we now? We are at 10:51. My goodness me, doesn't the time go on when you're having fun? Good morning. We have some nice people over in the corner there who came in while I was talking to Stephen, and I think they're having coffee, or is it a gin and tonic? Coffee. Yeah. Right. We like people wandering through. It gives us a sense of the liveliness of the town. So I wasn't ignoring you when you came through, but we were talking about fairly curious stuff. Welcome to Lewis. Not unless you're Louisians, are you? No. Okay, there's some people visiting the town. Good stuff. Right. Okay. Now let's just go back for a moment to the front pages, which we haven't been able to pay much attention to for the last hour. The headlines this morning is a lockdown party. The photos hit the Prime Minister. Well, I've made my view quite clear. Is I could give a fig about these parties and what's happened in the past. I do understand that a lot of people see things on principle, but there is so much that needs addressing by our various levels of governance that I wish they would get on with that and stop peeing around with iced cake, beer and curry and all the other things which seem to have pushed other things aside. We have galloping inflation. We have rising prices, not only in the cost of living, but also abnormally and obscenely in energy prices. And these are things which need to be addressed. And when they take up valuable working time, worrying about whether a bottle of champagne was drunk when it shouldn't have been is I think it's an obsession which we need to break. The Metro, the London paper, lockdown in one. Is the media have got carried away with this. They, they're not, in my view, and I'm a member of them, and I'm very defensive of the media. It's not all the fault of the media, as a lot of people would say. Is Nonetheless, we seem to have lost our place in trying hard to let everybody know what the hell's going on in the world. Not least of which is in Ukraine. We blow hot and cold. It depends whether the Russians have managed to bomb something today, and we can savage them, or that Putin has got 10 more nurses around him. I mean, it just really quite silly. The Mirror. How did he get away with this? Oh, well, how did he get away with this? God's sake, he's prime minister. And for that matter, they get away with murder. I mean, when lockdown first started, the bars, the subsidised bars in Westminster, were kept open on the basis that they were restaurants. Ha ha ha! If you've ever been into a bar in Westminster, you will know that they are far from restaurants. But they altered the rules to suit themselves. So what's all the folderol about? Let's get them back to work. Let's force them back to work by peer pressure, popular pressure, and making sure that things are in many ways attended to as they should be attended to, as we expect them to be attended to. Today, we are in many ways facing a civil service which is going to rack and ruin. Apparently, the withdrawal from Afghanistan was an absolute travesty. They all decided to stay on holiday, partly to it. The Daily Star, I don't understand what a defo is. Yep, it's defo, not a party. We can't even communicate as a newspaper anymore, as newspapers anymore. The Guardian, God bless the Guardian, fresh danger for Johnson over number 10 drinks pictures. There is a picture of him holding up a glass. He could have been about to throw the contents away, for all we know, with a picture like that. But that's evidence now, and something else to the feeding frenzy of sharks. The Times, what was the title? Partying PM misled the Commons. Well, that is true, and that's one of the things that really must be addressed, but not as a priority, not taking up the time and the space that it is in our national conscience. Is let's have a go at him by all means, but after we've looked at some of these national things which need attention of our ruling classes. The Daily Telegraph, pressure on the Met over pictures of the PM raising a toast in number 10. Well, the poor old Met, it's been taking stick for a lot of things for about 3 or 4 years. Poor Cressida Dick is at her wit's end. Mind you, there's a survivor. She's been taken to task and hauled over the coals by parliamentary committees, by newspapers, by almost everybody who can put her in their sights. But she's managed to still hold on to the role that she's got. So if survival is the game, then you've got a few survivors there. The Daily Express, nothing to see here. The Yard has said that Boris broke no rules. Now, presumably, if they're going to make that stance and make that statement, they've investigated fairly thoroughly, or have they? Is our a belief and confidence in the police such that we now say, when it says something that we don't like to hear, to hell with it. We won't believe it. This whole thing is getting everybody into a dreadful state of affairs. The Financial Times that goes off. Um, they've gone back to the windfall tax issue. Once again, controversial, but seems to me to be a sensible way of raising some money to help with the present national financial crisis. My only difference is that there is some suggestion that lump sums will be given to the less fortunate in our society. And I don't agree with that because that means that they can spend it in any way that they want. And many people will, and I'm not talking necessarily about just poor people, many people, when they get a lump sum like that, don't spend it on themselves or on the issues that for which they got it. It goes on other things. But a windfall tax, not a bad idea, I think. Particularly, I think that they quote here the amount of money. I see whether I can just see it. Yes, more than £10 billion of excess profits. So a tax on £10 billion would go a long way to a long way to give it buying a pint for me. That's for sure. Now I've lost my papers for some reason. Never mind. I will never understand these things for as long as I live. So we have to end with the Financial Times because I can't access the other at the moment. But that was all. The only thing that I think that is, as far as the Sun is concerned, is it has avoided like crazy getting involved in the key political things. One has to ask why, if it's to be taken seriously as a national newspaper. And I have to say that lovely Shannon has just popped in, and there she is, the face of brightness and freshness. Come and say hello. Yes, here we are. Now that's Shannon. She greets me every morning in the early hours, about 6:30, 7 o'clock. We race one another in.
I always win.
Female power, or whatever we call it.
Thank you.
One of the three lovely ladies, and we've actually had all three of them here this morning. It's Jane, Shannon, and Sally. All have made an appearance. And this, actually, the hotel is humming this morning. There's lots of noise coming from the farmer's bar. We've got a few people in this bar. Whereas I sometimes feel I'm wandering lonely as a cloud. This morning we're getting quite a bit of traffic. It is now 11:01. The date is the 24th of May in the year 2022. Not an auspicious year in many ways, but the human race still seems to be going on. So one way or another, we are we're flourishing, he said, not really meaning that, or not even really believing it. Now, I like just to take 2 or 3 minutes to catch my breath. And the way I do it is we have a wonderful park here called the Grange Park, Southover Grange Park, which is the grounds, or are the grounds of an old a mansion inhabited by some people called the Newtons, vaguely related to the bloke who had an apple drop on his head. But they were a prominent family, and particularly during the English Civil War, when they took the Cromwellian side. And the royalists who needed to get a stake in East Sussex never did really make it, and mostly because of the family that occupied this house. Anyway, their extensive gardens or grounds or lands or whatever, with lots of stuff that they polluted, purloined from the from the Priory is just very, very relaxing. Here it is. Now, many people ask us about the helmet that we use as our logo. And that helmet is a piece of architecture or sculpture which sits in the grounds of Lewes Priory, the St Pancras Priory, which was pulled down as the dissolution of the monasteries by a chap called Thomas Cromwell, who was trying to curry favour with Henry VIII. I'm never sure whether I'm pleased because he was also the advisor that picked Anne of Cleves as a queen, and that Henry VIII famously said, "I just couldn't go to bed with her; she was so plain." But because of that, he eventually lost his power and had his head cut off. And apparently, it also took the executioner 3 times to actually sever the neck from the body. It's a particularly painful way of going. And in those days, you just had to be careful if you went for power that you were built to keep it. But anyway, he wanted the Anne of Cleves house, which is a Tudor manor, no more than a spit throw from those gardens. And they, in turn, are no more than a throw from where we're seated now in this very ancient and historic hotel. So we are full of history in Lewes to bursting point. You can barely walk without tripping over a piece of history. And one of the things that here, if you look at the rafters and the beams, they are all original. And they were all here when Tom Paine was developing the rights of man. It's funny that the name Tom Paine doesn't stir people the way that Sir Francis Drake or Sir Walter Raleigh does, or for that matter, Lincoln in the United States. And yet he was and is credited with being the man that actually persuaded the colonists to start the War of Independence. And according to historian Bill Bryson, was the man who named the United States. And what's more, was driving past with one of his American friends, Ben Franklin, I think it was, past the Palace of Westminster and said there should be a chamber where the common man should be represented. It should indeed be called the House of Commons. Ring the bell. He was some pup. But on top of that, he was also an inventor. He almost invented, the internal combustion engine, except that he was doing it for boats and not for motor cars with vehicles. He invented the single span bridge, of which we had several fine examples in this country. And he invented the smokeless candle. On the basis that in those days, if you wanted to read at night, you put on a candle, and then damn near died from the toxic fumes that it put out. And he actually invented a candle that didn't put out toxic fumes. So he was a man of many parts, and this was his hunting ground. And it is said, and the story is handed down from landlord to landlord of a hotel not too far away from here, the Crown Hotel, that he would come into the Crown and anybody who would listen, he would talk to them at the bar about his rights of man theories, to the point where he bored the hell out of them. And they basically said, listen, landlord, we are not coming drinking here if that man is allowed in. And he was barred. And he came over here to the White Hart, and now the White Hart is famous for what he did. So we've got lots of history that trips over itself in Lewis. What you're seeing behind me is part of that history. And it gives you almost a creepy feeling to think that these famous people, these people that dictated or developed our future, the way that we live, were here under these roofs. Hey, right. What else have we got that we can put up for your entertainment and viewers? I've played this several times now. I like it, and I like it. It was done by some students, and it's all about Mad Jack Fuller, who was also a millionaire type here in the mid 1800s, and who did many things, including build a number of follies, most of which are still extant, and you can see around the country. And a folly is built for no apparent purpose, although it is said that Mad Jack was very, very patriotic and wanted to be able to go to the top of towers while the Napoleonic Wars were on, and just in case there was a victory, that he could see it first and make sure that the bells started to ring. A nice story. The other story is that in Brightling Church, which is no more than I don't know, 20 or 30 miles from here at the very most, there is a pyramid, and it's Mad Jack's mausoleum, his grave, and it is said that he is sitting in there at a table with cards in his hand, a bottle of wine to his right, and a chicken dinner in front of him. Thus was his favorite food and drink, which took him to the incredible weight of 22 stone. Can you imagine? He was an interesting MP. He was barred from the House because he told the Speaker that he was a pipsqueak and didn't know what he was doing. So he wasn't afraid to flaunt his power, if you like. But on top of that, he also was a great philanthropist. He paid for the first Eastbourne lighthouse, the first Eastbourne lifeboat, and he supported strongly the experimentation that created Davy's lamp, the mining lamp that was able to detect, could be used where there was gas and not create an explosion. But probably most important of all, he supported Faraday. And Faraday was a scientist of the time who invented Faraday's cage and did lots of experimental work on radio beams, which indirectly created that very important item in most of our homes, the television set. So Mad Jack Fuller was quite something. And here's a student's view of some of the things that he built.
I always find it strange how two people can experience and view a place in completely different ways.
Jack Fuller was born into money, and at the age of 20 he moved to Brightling in East Sussex after inheriting land and a fortune from his uncle Rose. At the age of 22, Fuller became the Member of Parliament for Southampton. Fuller lost his seat after a vicious row over his support for slavery. This was the time when he began to focus more on his estate and his love of combining art and science.
I moved down from Glasgow to Sussex when I was 9 years old, and that would be in 2003. I first saw the Follies when my granddad was driving me through Brightling. And I remember looking at them and just asking them what these strange buildings were.
Jack Fuller was affectionately known as Mad Jack by local residents who did not understand his fascination with useless buildings. A folly is a building with no purpose other than decoration. The first of Jack's 6 follies was the summer house. Jack was a keen gambler, and he entered into a wager that he could see the spire of Dallington Church from his window. Upon realising that he was mistaken, he quickly constructed the sugarloaf to very effectively mimic the church spire.
I looked out of my girlfriend's window and I saw this strange building in the distance, and I asked her, what is this strange building? And she replied that it was the Sugarloaf. The first time I went, I remember I took my girlfriend there and I gave her a love letter.
The Rotunda Temple was built to hold artwork, most notably paintings commissioned from J.M.W. Turner. Jack was a philanthropist, and during an economic depression, he hired hundreds of local labourers to build a huge wall around his estate. However, the wall did not stop trespassers.
We all thought the temple was full of art, and I was a bit shocked to find out that there was none. All I found when I first went in was graffiti left from the Canadian Air Force that was stationed on the estate during the Second World War.
The temple is the motif for the internationally renowned Breitling Horse Trials, which brings in competitors and spectators from all walks of life. The Hermit's Watchtower was built so that Jack could survey his land and have views of the sea.
The tower was my special place. I used to go there when I was feeling a bit down or I had to clear my mind. As you go up the stairs, on the right-hand side, my girlfriend's initials are still there. Mine, well, are not there anymore. When I was feeling alone, I would go to the top of the tower, I would lie down, I would stare through the open roof. I'd wait for nightfall, and then I would look at all the stars. I would wonder what my place on this earth is. Why I was here, and I would also wonder why the Follies are here. And it dawned on me that the Follies aligned almost with the stars, and it feels like some of them are there to replicate Orion's belt, others are there to be individual stars, like the observatory would be Betelgeuse. I've heard some people argue that the observatory is not a folly as it serves a purpose, but don't all the follies serve a purpose? They serve our local history, our culture. When I first came to Sussex from Glasgow, I was such an outsider. People had no idea what I was saying, and I had to get something to point me in the right direction.
The obelisk dominates the landscape and is the second highest point in Sussex.
I remember looking up at the needle and realising that it pierces the vast, uninterrupted sky.
Jack Fuller commissioned the pyramid to be his mausoleum 24 years before his death. This immense structure draws attention away from the Thomas à Becket church, in whose graveyard it stands.
I've heard that Jack was buried in the pyramid sitting up in his armchair, with a glass of claret and a roast chicken dinner in front of him. The follies are all focal points, but don't let them fool you. Their place in the landscape belies their size and their distance. In the beginning I was hungry to consume them, and I had rushed to each one in turn. But a short distance turned into a mile, a run into a trek. At last, I grew to love the surroundings and adopted the follies as guides rather than destinations.
Jack Fuller was respected by many as a squire who, at a time of extreme poverty, when soldiers were returning from the Napoleonic War, did what he could to provide employment and prevent revolution. He was ridiculed by others for his views on slavery and his obsession with erecting follies while people were going hungry.
Fuller's follies are an important part of my life and have helped me to find my place. I know many people have followed this path before I have, and I love nothing better than bringing new people to experience them and to fall in love like I did.
Well, there we are, and the time now is 11:22. Just 5 minutes, sorry, from the end of our morning program, which comes to you from the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, East Sussex. I'm Keith Hayes. This is Mirador Television, the local TV for Lewis and the surrounding area, but we pride ourselves on being local and not parochial. So we delve into things which have a much wider remit than those than just simply Lewis itself. And we are very pleased that we are able to broadcast from the White Hart. The White Hart being the premier inn now, I suppose, of Lewis, in as much as it is very, very ancient and much has happened under its roof and in its rooms, not least of which is the formulation of the rights of man by Tom Paine, which has given it a blue plaque on the outside, which says that this hotel was the cradle of American independence, and so it should be. Right ho, we'll sort of get rid of these things that we. And is there one other little thing that we might be able to play? Let's see. Well, yes, I suppose there are things which, but I do like to play this one almost on a daily basis because it gives us a gentle nudge about war.
How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? How many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? Yes, and how many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Yes, and how many years must the mountain exist before it is washed to the seas? And how many years can some people exist before they are allowed to be free? Yes, and how many times can a man turn his head and pretend that he just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Yes, and how many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? And how many ears must one man have before he can hear people cry? Yes, and how many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
All right, just a little comment on war, since we are at war, and a senseless war it is, like all wars, senseless, costing thousands of lives on both sides, and bringing out the very worst in mankind. 11:26. Tomorrow we have Stuart Dolby, energy expert, to bring us up to date with what's happening on the energy front. We have Max Hurd, our young apprentice-student, who will be in to host co-host with me this program. He always brings a breath of fresh air. He sees things totally differently. It is salt and pepper. He's only 18, just turned 18, and I'm somewhat over the hill on that. All in all, we are not a bad little outfit, and we're growing in stature. We're growing in interest. We have started to develop our team, and you'll be seeing in the future Diane Mouchot from Suzanne Mouchot from New York, Melissa Conti from New York, it could be that we will be bringing back one or two more favourite people from overseas. Here, he hasn't been excellent for the last couple of weeks because business has taken him away. We have Fergus Wood on the wine front. We have Andrew Sloan on the hair front. And I hope that we'll soon see the return of Sarah Fitchhays on the art front. And there are other little bits of people. Jane Watkins from Hastings, who co-hosts as well from that part of the neck of the woods. So all in all, we have a variety of things, and it's not just listening to me rabbit on every day. And I hope that I can start to take a less and less role so that we can develop important ideas and programs that we've got going here that need a bit of time, which means that I can't always sit behind this camera. And I'm sure that a lot of people say, thank God for that. Never mind, 11:29, time for us to go. Thank you very much for being with us. And I hope that you get something out of this program. It's Mirador Television, Break an Egg, and Affairs from the Heart, 5 days a week from 8:30 till 11:30, and we love to see you here with us and even taking part if you've such a mind. Toodle pip.